And for further legal analysis, we're bringing in criminal and civil attorney Mark Reichel. Mark, appreciate you being here. Let's jump right into this because we see Justice Jackson writing in a solo dissent that the court's decision was an existential threat to the rule of law. There are predictions that a massive amount of lawsuits will be filed here. Some of them already have been. And then birthright citizenship battle will be back at the Supreme Court. What are you expecting we will see? What are the major ripple effects you're anticipating?
Well, for many, many years, the rule was if a judge issued an injunction, a preliminary injunction would stop things, pauses things until full litigation happens. That could be binding across the nation. And by the way, it happened a lot during the Biden administration. Conservatives would find out a conservative judge who would say the Biden administration can't do something about gun rights and so forth. And that would bind things. Remember the abortion pill, I think the day after pill was held up for a long time because conservative judges had issued these injunctions and the Supreme Court sat by idly. But now what they're saying is that they're kind of limiting it to this, but it's powerful. It only applies to each plaintiff that files a lawsuit. Each plaintiff that files a lawsuit, that's who it's only binding on. So you're going to have a lot of chaos and a lot of work for lawyers. Anybody who thinks there's a Trump administration policy that is violating their rights can't just wait for the ACLU to file on behalf of someone else and get an opinion. You're going to have to actually get a lawyer and get to court and fight it on your own behalf now.
And does this effectively majorly weaken the power of lower federal courts to check the executive branch? Is this a win for the separation of powers?
You know, it's actually a loss for the separation of powers, if you ask me. It's been very clear. This has been going on for over 200 years that it's operated this way. And, you know, for it now to come down that it's going to have to be applied to each individual plaintiff, you're going to see a lot more class actions. In fact, Justice Kavanaugh was very clear that he knows there's going to be a lot more class action lawsuits. So he encourages, in his concurring opinion, he encourages the Trump administration to immediately appeal and get to the U.S. Supreme Court so they can make the decisions and stop this hodgepodge across the nation on issues like this.
If a president in the future did issue an order that was unconstitutional or harmful, what recourse does the public have now to stop it?
You have to individually file suit unless, fortunately for you, there's something significant like that. If there's a class action that includes your class, if you're in that class of people and an injunction has been issued, then you're protected. So that's what's going to happen. A lot of class actions are going to go on, and the courts are now going to be really clogged.
The White House claims that the president's executive order narrowing birthright citizenship is consistent with the 14th Amendment, arguing that children of undocumented or temporary visa holders are not subject to the jurisdiction of the U.S. That's the language as required for citizenship. Help us understand that legal argument, and do you think it holds up?
No, they're the only ones that hold that argument. There's not one court yet that's agreed with them, not one court. In fact, they didn't bring that to the Supreme Court. They specifically avoided that. They said, we'd like to litigate that in the lower courts, but they're preventing us from doing it because one opinion is stopping us nationwide. So we'd like to litigate that. And the dissenters in this case in the Supreme Court said, it is ludicrous argument. It's a ludicrous argument. And to affect people like that without us stepping in and stopping it is inappropriate. I can just predict they're never going to prevail on that. That's not what the Constitution says. If they don't like the language of the 14th Amendment, they can actually try to get a new amendment. Okay, they can have a constitutional convention and change it. But for now, that's the clear language of the amendment.
All right, and Mark, I do want to turn quickly with the time we have to a new development in the January 6th criminal cases. It's being reported that out of the blue, the Justice Department fired at least 3 prosecutors involved in the U.S. Capitol riot criminal cases. What do you know about this, and what could be that sudden reason behind the firings?
Really quickly, though, I do want to say it's an honor to be interviewed by Natasha, who just won an Emmy for an outstanding emerging anchor in news, and it's well deserved, and I want to congratulate you on that.
Incredibly kind.
So everyone watched January 6th, and we watched what happened. Not anybody disagreed that it was a federal crime. Kevin McCarthy was the Speaker of the House at the time. He went to the floor of the House and said this is a crime, and that President Trump encouraged it. So federal prosecutors are just doing their job. They had no axe to grind. They weren't politically motivated, and they brought these charges. This is retribution. They've come back, and Pam Bondi and some others have said these people are going to be fired. And, you know, they were just doing their job.
All right. Attorney Mark Reichel, always appreciate the analysis, the expertise, and appreciate the shout out. Very kind. Thank you.
Congratulations.
Thank you.